Welcome. Thanks for joining us to chat with the CSD. I'm your host, Dr. Darrin Frye. I'm the Chief Science Director for the Naval Medical Research Unit in San Antonio, Texas. Our video mission is to do all things science, from the seabed all the way to the stars, and everything in between. Now, along that journey, we get to interview exciting scientists who are on the cutting edge, trying to address some of life's most complicated problems. Our video question today is, what would it be like living on Mars? Now, there's nobody in the world that I know of that is more qualified to answer that question than our guest that we have today, Lieutenant Commander Anca Selariu. Welcome.
Thank you, CSD. I am really happy whenever I get to talk about Mars. So I already apologize for the excess enthusiasm.
Oh.
But yes, my name is Anca Selariu. I'm a lieutenant commander in the U.S. Navy, and I've joined about 5 years ago. My background spans a variety of things. I have a PhD in interdisciplinary biomedical sciences, as you know. I have 2 bachelor's degrees, one in biochemistry and another one in philology, which is really the science of text. And to me, these things are pretty much the same thing. You're studying the world and the way it communicates. So it's really just different ways of looking at the world. As Dr. Frye said, I got the privilege of being selected for NASA's Mars mission Analog 1 that happened at the Johnson Space Center. And it started in June 2023, and it lasted for 378 days. The critical questions that had to be answered and have to be answered before humans can actually get to Mars are we ready to have a program or a system that keeps people healthy, engaged? There will be a lot of work that has to be done, not just science collection and being mesmerized by the surface of Mars, because let's face it, that will be staggering to even contemplate. But also, are we going to be have sufficient nutrition to send on a 3-year journey, because realistically that's how long the first missions are going to take, because it takes a while to get there, and then you have to stay and do the science and do the building and do the maintenance of everything that keeps you alive, and then return. So all of these questions, or at least some of these questions that are possible to be answered, we try to answer during this mission analog. And the mission is going to continue for another 2 iterations. So I'm personally very excited to see what comes out and what we get to learn.
All right. So the CHAPIA mission was what? Crew Health and Performance Exploration Analog.
Indeed.
That's the one, CHAPIA.
That's exactly
yes.
it. Mm-hmm.
So you were one of the 4 on the first inaugural mission, and like you say, there's 2 more.
Right.
I understand the second one is closed, but the third one is looking for applicants, I believe. What would you give advice for a person that says, hey, I want to do what you did? What would be some attributes or things they would need to have in order to apply?
And that's exactly one of the questions that NASA is trying to answer. What is it that makes a good combination of crew? Because you have to have complementary attributes. You have to get people who get along and complement each other and just match in a puzzle. It's not like your individual attributes make you perfect for a mission. It's you in combination with your crew that make you an ideal crew that can carry on this mission. But when you apply, I would advise people to think very, very carefully, because it is an over a year commitment. And if that is not the most important thing, that to the core is paramount to you and is worth everything you've got, then don't apply. If you don't believe with all your being that humans ought to be exploring space and reach every corner that we can possibly reach, don't apply. It is not about gaining fame. Trust me. You get your 5 seconds of fame and then you get forgotten. It's not about that. It's about answering critical science questions that absolutely need to be answered before we even begin to contemplate living on Mars. And that is critical for the entire globe.
Understood. Wow. So that leads me to my first question. But first, this is a 1-year mission. You're secluded in a Martian simulated environment. It sounds like the experiment not is what you can do or how you cope, but it's also how the team works and the dynamics. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
So they're probably watching. That will be very important as going forward. And I have seen it myself. You are the most, since you've been out for 4 months, since you returned to Earth, right? So you have been the most interesting person in the room. So it seems to be everybody's interest in this topic. So it leads me to the first question is like, the odds of being selected were infinitesimally small. So what were you thinking? What made you want to do it? I know you just described you must have this just in enduring passion, but what made you think you could do it, and why did you decide to do it?
For me, the answer to the question, is it worth the sacrifice? Is that sacrifice required? Absolutely. I mean, to me, there's nothing that so I have a tiered value and vision approach about the nature of our existence. So to me, it's incredibly important for life in general to be supported and to be championed anywhere we can get to. And to me, getting to Mars is one of these critical steps. It's not even should we go there, but how are we getting ready to go there? Mm-hmm. So to have the incredible privilege to actively participate in that, as in the front line, it's still shocking to me how I got to do that. But it was an absolute commitment on my part, and so it was from everybody else that was part of the team. The people that you saw as members of the crew and everybody who you don't get to see. The NASA team and everybody who supports them is incredibly hardworking and dedicated and committed, and their heart and soul on that front line. It's incredible.
You spent a year in isolation with 3 other crew. What was that environment like? I can only imagine what it must be like in that kind of place. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, it was an extraordinary environment. So NASA contracted a company to build an environment out of what looked like regolith. So it was red 3D printed a habitat that was about 1,700 square feet, and it had rooms. For me, it was very spacious. It had rooms for crew quarters. We had our kitchen and an entertainment center. We had an exercise room. So this was kind of trying to simulate what an actual surface habitat might look like, so that we get to learn a little bit about what people prefer and how they interact and how they work, how they consider all those spaces efficient for what they need to do.
Unbelievable experience. When you were talking, I was thinking and seeing you in your uniform, your dress uniform, I also see that commitment in your service. When I've spoken to you, you're very inspirational to young leaders and young girls are going into STEM fields. You have all of that. Where did you get this commitment to service, and how has the service helped you in your life? To me, what the military represents is who supports the idea of freedom. I mentioned this to you before, that I grew up, I was born in communist Romania, while Romania was under the communist regime. To me, it's incredibly important to
understand the value of democracy, the value of freedom of speech, the value of being able and not being scared to explore and to go anywhere and do to bring your value and the value of everybody around you as a society and as a globe to the maximum it can be for the benefit of the entire humankind and planet kind and all earthlings. So to me, it's absolutely part of that mission and part of that vision. So whatever you get to do in life needs to align to that, so that when you go to bed at night, you get to say, I've done the right thing today. And then the next morning, you have this excitement that I'm doing the right thing today.
Beautiful. Well, as I listen to you speak, I think that one of the things, you never really left the earth, but yet in a way you have. And I think it's giving you a perspective that very few people have. And I'm beginning to think that perspective is more than just being well aware and street smart. I think it's what wisdom is. How do you think your experiences change your perception? Because I think you have an outer earthly perception that very few people do. Do you feel that way?
You know, it's so funny that I didn't expect it, but I absolutely do. There's something called the overview effect, if I'm not mistaken, that astronauts get when they see Earth through the cupola, when they're on the International Space Station. That feeling of incredible awe that I'm of that planet and I'm here, and you see it one dot encapsulates everything you will ever know, you have ever known, and all you love is there. And I did not leave Earth. I did not even have a cupola that actually showed Earth somewhere in the distance. But I had this, and I cannot tell you exactly when it happened, but it was a gradual build-up to this very deep and extreme realization of being of Earth. And it's something that you hear all the time, that yes, we need to respect Earth, that we are, this is our beautiful planet and all that. But it doesn't strike you like to your very core. It's incredibly powerful, and it's impossible to explain until you live it. You realize that this is going to sound very strange, but I realized that life, when it began, it's almost like an organism, and when it was born, Earth was hellish. Really, right. It endured incredibly tough conditions, and it continues to do so. And it's like the skin that covers the entire globe, and it looks so different. Everywhere you go, you're going to find a completely different ecosystem, full and brimming with life of extreme diversity, and it undergoes all of these fluctuations. And I'm thinking that we are just this speck. It's like a skin cell, on this enormous, beautiful organism, and it's at its middle age, and it will continue to go through all of these transformations. It's just, for me, it's mesmerizing to see it and to really feel it. And when I came out, I was so glad to be back with my brothers and sisters. And when I got my first mosquito bite, I was like, thank you. It's like being back and being allowed back into the ecosystem of Earth. So the fact that I got to interact back with my earthlings that I belong with, it's
Well, this is a perspective I was talking about. Every time I hear you speak, I see this is not a typical perspective of our average person. And I've never heard anybody thank a mosquito ever in my life. But this makes me think about the Earth and your perspective. I feel that we are a very lucky population, in America especially, that we are the land of plenty for sure, and abundance, and perhaps even waste. And I was wondering, this is more specific to your experience. I know you can't speak about everything, and NASA would like you to wait on some of the things, but part of the work was providing your own food and growing food and seeing that experience. And I was interested in what you missed first, because we have so much, and you went minimalistic. I don't know what I would miss first. What did you miss first? And tell me a little bit about your experience. I think you mentioned once about food texture and the glorious part of feeling something alive.
Right. Yes. One thing that I have to say, and people don't believe it, but NASA has magicians that create the food system because it's extraordinarily delicious. And it's the idea was to have a food system that is sufficient to maintain the nutritional needs for the crew for a very long time, and even in conditions of no resupply and no ability to grow food. So in case your crops fail, what happens? You know, because you cannot rely on that kind of scenario. It's a risk. So you have to prepare and prepackage all of these foods. So there are lots of things that get taken into account, like the texture, the taste. Does it meet every need? And I represent a completely different palate from the commander and from the medical officer, from the flight engineer. You know, we have different preferences, but somehow they need to be met. All of those. And shockingly, I miss that food a lot right now. But we did get the experience of growing our own crops. Honestly, for me, it wasn't necessarily about the food or the taste. Yes, they were delicious. Yes, we did eat them, but they were alive. And I was petting them a lot more than you would think is normal. I just the fact that they smelled incredible, they felt healthy, they made the connection to the planet so deep, and so the gratitude of seeing a tomato plant grow up, I have no way of expressing, and I want to carry that on here. I want to see things grow, and I want to be connected to the soil and feel the fungus feeding the plants, and it's exhilarating, which is really bizarre because I've always been an urban animal before.
I just love your perspective, and I think you do have incredible experience. What would you like to leave as your legacy? I know you're still building your career, you're accelerating your career, but what would you like to leave as a legacy based on your experience?
A couple of things. One is this, if I could wave a magic wand and make people see how wonderful they are, and how wonderful they are together, only together. That's one thing that I would love to make people understand about themselves and about how they interact and in the world with each other. And the other is, I really hope that more people understand how they are parts of this organism that I was talking about. They're members of its huge history, and they can be, rather than thinking of themselves as overlords or or superior in a way, but rather look around and embrace nature and learn from it, and do it with humility and respect. And this really teaches you how to behave with less take but more give, to not to only to your fellow human, but to everyone who's making this planet the way it is and has been. And that means, you know, give to the forest, give to the ocean, and don't damage it, but protect it. I would love it if that was possible, because what we can do for not just for ourselves but for all Earthlings combined is reach any corner of space imaginable. That it's only the imagination that is the limitation in what we can do, but we have to do it together. The wisdom is not just in humans, the wisdom is everywhere.
Wow, wonderful. I was going to ask you about your message to humanity, but I think you just gave us that, something to think about, and it's very inspiring. So I could talk to you forever. You're a fascinating person and very accomplished. So I want to thank you for your appearance. You're an amazing person. Great luck in the future. And as the Navy would say, fair winds and following seas.